You're listening to Veterans Radio Hour. This is a special episode, The Music of War. Here's your co-host, Ranger Doug.
This is Ranger Doug. Welcome to our 14th program. This one, part 2 in The Music of War. This is entitled Songs of Small Wars. Over to you, General.
Thank you, Ranger Doug. Last week we discussed World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, and also songs during the Cold War. Tonight we cover small wars, contingencies, peacekeeping operations, whatever you want to frame that particular engagement by the GIs of the United States of America. It's all about the power of music in war. Songs that GIs identify with in combat, in training, in uniform, or when they take their uniform off. How music motivates, relates to their situation as a soldier, a Marine, a sailor, airman, or Coast Guard. Some songs strengthen morale. They bolster courage, inspire love, for one's buddy or for one's country. Our flag, a unit patch, a skill set, one's generation after generation of service in their family. Music inspires a GI over there with love for family back home, or one's home in the land of the free. Songs are written about certain wars, small conflicts, in a positive or even a negative way, about bravery, sacrifice, and of course, duty. Tonight, in our part 2, we will focus on Korea after the war, the DMZ days, continuing still today. Discussions on Operation Eagle Claw, Grenada, El Sal, Haiti, Somalia, Panama, Bosnia-Herzegovina, and Syria. Back to you, Ranger Doug.
We have the great honor tonight of having an idol of mine, a music idol anyway, and a person that everyone will recognize for a number of wonderful, famous songs that are very patriotic. We're lucky to have him with us tonight, Lee Greenwood. But I'd like to pass you, Lee, off to General Grange, who will do the festivities. Thank you. General, over to you.
Thank you, Ranger Doug. And Lee, thank you so much for being on. It's great hearing you again, your voice on our program tonight. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you for having me on the show.
What we'd like to start with, you have a lot of songs out there, but I got to tell you, the one that GIs love, I love, all my friends love, and what we use in our different units was Proud to be an American. And, you know, there's a couple verses in that song that hit every time we're in a conflict, that hit home. And after this last withdrawal from Afghanistan, it's very fragile. It's very fragile what these verses stand for. And, like, you know, the flag still stands for freedom. You take what happens in every conflict. You know, the American flag may be the most burned and destroyed by different places around the world, but it's also the most recognized flag. And you can't say that about a lot of the flags. If you looked on a sheet of paper that showed all the flags of the world, most people can hardly recognize any of them except for it's always up there, the United States, flag of America. And that flag on the shoulder of a GI in a combat situation in the field, when a little kid comes up to it, or an old woman, or a crippled man that's trying to scratch a living in that part of the world, and just they'll touch a GI's flag on their shoulder. Usually it's on your right shoulder, and it's because of several things. They touch it in awe. They think of freedom. They think of a second chance. They think of opportunity in that way. It just means a lot. And then, of course, there's another way when you see it over a coffin on the back of ramp of a C-130 or a C-17, or coming back from a foreign nation from conflict. It means something there too. It makes you then think about that, and I won't forget the men who died. And that's the situation like those coffins, or when the flag is folded and handed to the spouse of a fallen comrade. Now, we're challenged with that sometimes, but when they hear your song, it brings it back to most American citizens. So I'd like to just go into a story, and then I'm going to ask for your comments, if you don't mind, about Proud to be an American. But we were up at a DMZ in the fall, around November of 1988. You were on a USO tour. You actually were asked to do that by the U.S. Air Force, but we stole you from the Air Force and talked your people into coming up that were with you and your band to the DMZ. You were going up there anyway. My battalion was on the DMZ at that time, and you graciously agreed to do so. Now, on that tour, I don't believe that you had the instruments at that time with you, so I asked my adjutant, I said, what do you mean they don't have any instruments to play? It's Lee Greenwood. What are you talking about? And I can't remember the situation, but we hustled to get guitars and other pieces of equipment from the recreational groups there in the bases. And they weren't the best equipment, but we got them for your band, and you guys made it happen. We were up on a DMZ, and I asked my logistics officer that we needed a stage. So we found rocket crate boxes, and we built the stage that afternoon, so it would be there when you got up there on the DMZ. And then we had as many battalion guys that weren't on patrol in the DMZ, or outpost, to gather around the stage to listen to your team play several songs. But the one that hit home for me for the rest of my life was Proud to be an American, because when that was the third song you played. And when that song was played, you sang that song, I got notified by, again, the adjutant came running out and whispered in my ear that my wife was going into labor down at Yonsan Military Hospital in Seoul. And then I had to get there immediately. And you played that song. I went up to the stage. I gave you one of our First Rock coins. And you whispered to me, hope it's a son. No, you whispered, have a son. That's right. It was have a son. Later you gave me a picture with that on it. Anyway, the assistant division commander luckily was there. He gave me a hop on his helicopter. I jumped on with my web gear and helmet and everything and flew down there, and I made it by about 5 minutes. I made it in time for the birth of my first son, David Grange Jr. And then you gave me that picture. And I'll never forget that. So, yes, that I told a story a little bit about me, but that whole battalion was just so happy that you came up there and did that show just for our battalion on the DMZ. So, Lee, thank you for that.
I am, first of all, privileged to be on the show. Thank you for having me here. And General Grange, I certainly remember those moments very vividly when we were on the USO tour with the United States Air Force, taking us all around the world. And I remember you had asked, the Army had said, can you come up and visit the DMZ? And, of course, I agreed immediately. Unfortunately, I had no clothes that I could change into, but what I was wearing. And I had one of these decorated jackets, a jean jacket with a wolf on the back. And I remember, I said, I have nothing else. I can put on some kind of army jacket, and you said, wear it. And so we went into the building, and I remember a North Korean officer outside the building looked in and kind of smirked at us, and one of your staff got a picture of him. He was gone the next day. That was kind of cool. But of course, visiting the DMZ was serious as a heart attack for me. I recognized the tenseness there even at that time, and here we are, still another page of history, and nothing seems to have changed. And what's good about that is that our military hasn't really changed. It's always serious when we're talking about combat zones or places that they're in danger. They're all about business, and that's what makes me so proud most of all. And of course, as you know, I wrote the song "God Bless the USA," and everybody remembers the line "Proud to be an American." And the reason I wrote that was because I was very proud, even, being from a farm in California, not serving in the military, of my father, who joined the Navy after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And I was born in 42, so he was deployed at the time. And I got to meet him later in life because my mother and father divorced, as what happened a lot in war zones and in combat deployment. Families fall apart. But I was raised with a lot of love with my grandparents, and I guess maybe that kind of support always let me know that as long as you're in a free country, you can do anything you want. And I left home at 16 and spent a lot of years in Nevada before I got my career in Tennessee as a country artist. And then asking to go to a place that is a war zone for our soldiers, man, I'll go in a heartbeat. And I kind of miss not being in the military, but I've met so many people like you, General, and many more. And let me just add this as a note. I was proud to be an opening act for your son, David. And that's a little humor there, I guess. But I know you did. I know you did have to go, and you're very courteous, and you gave me your challenge coin, and I appreciate that. I still have it.
Well, thanks for that. Just a couple of things. Lee and I both have World War II vet fathers, so that's important to both of us, and a little bonding there. Lee, I believe that on one of your USO shows, maybe Panama, that you actually came under fire or something happened while you were down there. Can you tell us that real quick?
Yeah, that was interesting. I always, when I'm with the military, I'm not afraid. If we come under siege or whatever, give me a gun. Let me defend ourselves. But in this particular case, we landed immediately, and my band got in a Chinook helicopter and went off to the first location. We did 3 shows before the invasion to take Noriega out. And we were asked to go down there by President Bush, who called me at my office, and we were very close, 41. And so I got in a Jeep with a soldier, and I had a letter from the president to take to 200 Marines in the jungle. And so we're driving through territory that was supposed to be secured, and we came under fire, and bullets whizzing through the Jeep. Took my driver's index finger off, and I grabbed it and put it like a pressure tourniquet on it with my hand so it wouldn't bleed out. And we just kept going, and finally, we got to the compound, and the Marines fanned out and just took them out. There were a couple of rebels, maybe a dozen of them, and they took them all out. So we were no longer under danger. But that was the only time ever, and I've been in all this, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Pakistan, and places where the Taliban flags were flying. But only Panama was a place that I got so close to the war that it was just like, give me a gun. I'll help myself out here.
Well, I'll tell you what, hooah to you. Well done. And
thank you.
The buddy aid you provided to your driver. That was great. And I tell you, when people don't get motivated, proud to be an American, and ruck up and move out, then if they don't get motivated, they got to go back to basic training, because I just can't understand it, because it is a combat multiplier, that song. I love it. I'd like to turn it over to Ranger Doug now. He has a few other things for Lee. Ranger Doug?
Thank you so much for joining us. And I wanted to also ask a bit about this new Bible that you've put out that to me is fascinating, and I'm ordering a copy tonight. I've heard you describe it on the radio. Can you give us a little bit of background? I think it's a fascinating idea for anyone in America these days. In fact, anyone in the world who's interested in America. Over to you, Lee.
Thank you very much. Since I was a little kid, I was raised in the First Baptist Church out in Sacramento, and I used to sing there when I was 10-year-old and 14 before I left home. And we have a Bible by our bed that we always refer to in the evening for saying prayers, or in the morning. And I thought to myself, of all of the times that I've performed, I remember people who are patriotic, but more than that, there are people who want to remember how this country got started. They refer to things like maybe your song should be the national anthem. And I said, well, do you not remember why the national anthem was played? Is because this country became a country at Fort McHenry, when we were able to say we are an independent country. You never want to get rid of that. So in releasing a new Bible, which is the actual King James Version, Old and New Testament, exactly as it should be, on the front cover, which is leather bound, it says, God Bless the USA Bible. In the back of the Bible, we've included the 4 documents that I feel are important, and that is the Pledge of Allegiance, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, and the Constitution, and a readable version, so that it's not so tiny you can't see it. So I think if someone's to want to make sure that their children understand, and you can't get to Washington, D.C. and see those documents in person, pick up this Bible, get it from our website, LouGreenwood.com, and we'll send you one.
Well, that's great. And I've been with Dave and others on a number of occasions where we've sung and listened to your song, and I just want you to know that we'd gladly stand up next to you as defenders still today, because there is no doubt we love this land. God bless the USA.
Thank you. And as I'm calling you from a place far away from my home in Tennessee, I would tell you that worldwide, America is respected, and because of the sacrifice of our military. And I encourage all these young men and women who are in the military, stand tall, stand proud. This country is behind you 100%. Don't worry about it. We were all there for you. And for the veterans who have been there in combat and you're either suffering from a physical wound or a PTSD and an invisible wound, reach out for help. Reach out to another veteran, maybe the DAV, somebody who can help you, because we love you and we honor you for all of your service.
Thank you again, Lee. General, over to you to conclude.
Yeah, thank you, Lee. My son and myself, I told him the story. He has the picture. He'll never forget what you did. Being born in Korea in a military, U.S. military hospital, and then I have a great picture of him and my dad and myself on the TMZ. It was a little colder when we were there, even though, it's standing there with the enemy in the background of the picture. And that was right after your visit. Maybe I think 2 weeks. He was on the DMZ, with the North Koreans looking at him. But that's okay. I was on one flank and holding him, and so was my dad, who's still alive. So, Lee, if you were going to join the service today, which service would you be a part of?
Well, let me preface the answer by saying that I have friends not just in the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Coast Guard, and in the Space Force. I mean, my father served the Navy, and my godfather of my sons is a former three-star, Don Rogers, married to June Scobie, the widow of Dick Scobie, the pilot of the Challenger. An awful lot in my life, 4 Air Force jets. I've shot an M1 tank out at Barstow. So it's easy for me, however, to look back at my life when I started at 16 years old, leaving home. I would have joined the Marines in a heartbeat. I like first in, last out. I like to take the brunt of the challenge to defend America. So it would be the Marines.
That's a great answer. And I'll tell you why I would have guessed that is because you were in combat with the Marines.
Yeah.
And that's the motivator, because you never forget that brotherhood in that regard. So I shouldn't say hooah. I should say hoorah to you, Lee. Great answer.
Thank you. Hoorah.
Rangers lead the way. Thanks again, and we love you, brother. Thank you.
Thank you, General. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Lee.
If tomorrow all the things were gone, I'd work for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife. I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, where the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. God bless the USA.
On the 4th of November, 1979, the Iranian student organization seized our embassy in Tehran. This led to a mission that became known later as Task Force or Operation Eagle Claw, which was our attempt under President Jimmy Carter to rescue those hostages, ultimately culminating in the raid attempt that was aborted on 24 April 1980. We have 2 members of that force with us tonight. One is Rick Lamb, who's a regular, and the other is General Grange himself. Rick, I would like to ask you to describe aspects of the mission you'd like to share with us, and then I'll ask General Grange the same thing. Over to you, Rick.
Eagle Claw, the mission notwithstanding, was just the atmosphere of the company. Hard Rock Charlie in 1979 and 80. Combat application dictated everything that we did. We had perimeter PT. It was either 9 or 13 miles around the perimeter there at Hunter Army Airfield, and it was focused on shoot, move, communicate, and medevac. The casualty care. Every time we went around that perimeter road, the medic knew he was going to get a stick, and because somebody was going to go down. We had a political commissar, and it was our supply sergeant, and he would get up in front of the formation, and he would cover world events. And he'd, tell us that the socialists and the communists are stoking brush fire wars in Latin America and Africa. Rangers, we got to be ready to move. Islamic terrorists in the Middle East were kidnapping generals. They were bombing buildings. They were hijacking planes. We have to be ready to move. And he alerted us to the threats across the entire globe and the requirements to be ready to go any time, any place, anywhere. And that was not common in the regular force. I mean, the regular force, you worked for passes and promotions, and that was pretty much it. I mean, you didn't clean the track or the tank because you had to take it to combat. You had to clean it for an inspection. And that was the way it was done. I mean, the books that the old man had us reading, from Five Fingers to Casca, the Eternal Mercenary, to Soldier of Fortune, it just kept our heads in the game all the time. And the movies, I think we went as an entire company to Deer Hunter and Apocalypse Now. And I'd never seen anything like that in my career. But the preparation for that mission, I know we've covered it on other podcasts, just totally broke the mold on how we were going to do it. And how we were going to task organize, the tactics, techniques, and procedures we were going to use. It was the first use of jeeps, motorcycles, and then we had to put the jeeps and the motorcycles on helicopters, on airplanes. We had to figure out those load plans, the center balance, how many people were going to get on the vehicles. First, we had to figure out who was going to drive them, who was going to TC them, and how we were going to maintain them. Because Rangers at that time came out of the swamps and we got into trucks. That was the first use of vehicles. So all of that was who were the best machine gunners, the best snipers, and the task organization actually used to use the Rangers to conduct that mission. Airfield seizures. We had not done an airfield seizure, so we were working with the PJs, working with the combat controllers, working with the AFSOC guys, and bringing in new weapons systems. So all of that was Eagle Claw. I mean, Eagle Claw was probably the birth of the modern day Ranger. But again, the mission notwithstanding, it was the atmosphere in that company, the leadership in that company. It was Hard Rock Charlie that broke that mold. And it even filtered down to the music. I know this is about music, but Warren Zevon had just cut an album, I think, that it had Bring Lawyers, Guns, and Money. It had Roland the Headless Thompson Gunner. It had Strength and Muscle, It's Jungle Work. And that was the type of stuff that we read, that we slept with, and that we listened to, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense, Rick. And I think it's a very, very trenchant observation, as we'd say. General Grange, how about you, sir?
Yeah, thank you. And Rick said it all. But Hard Rock Charlie, everybody and part of that team, we lived and breathed the unit, and we were fortunate to have that mission. Our company had that mission, and I was fortunate to be the company commander, my best duty assignment in the military. And no one told us how to do things. They told us what had to be done, and we were allowed to figure it out and make it happen through all the ranks in that company, from private up through captain. We were able to do it. And not with the best equipment at times, but we had priority of training. We did no other duty but train for that mission. And we trained with the best Air Force, the other military units, Marines, Navy, other pieces of the joint force above us constantly. Maybe not as well as we could have, but with the constraints that we had, the equipment we had, that's what we were given to do the mission. The morale was unbelievable. People didn't want to leave the unit at the end of the day. I remember sleeping on a cot in the orderly room almost every night, preparing for that mission. Everybody just wanted to perfect our ability to accomplish it. We lived and breathed it. I remember being alerted, actually at Thanksgiving dinner at my dad's house when he was CG at Fort Benning in Quarters 1. And a civilian plane picked me up, moved me back to Hunter Army Airfield in Savannah, Georgia. We got the mission. We started the train. The reason we got the mission was because of what the training our company was allowed to do. The mount training, the other type of environmental training and conditions, the weaponry training we did, the spirit of the company. That's why we got selected. And thank God we were ready to have a start point with a great bunch of sergeants and troopers to accomplish that. And great lieutenants. A lot of times lieutenants are laughed at and made jokes of, but people have to remember that lieutenants sign for stuff, just like company commanders, and they're responsible. And we had damn good lieutenants. Was I responsible for training them? Absolutely. And I did it the same way people trained me. And it was just a great experience. And yes, the mission did not succeed. But what was learned from that mission was extraordinary. And if you listen to the podcast on POWs and MIAs and those that do something about it, well, Hard Rock Charlie was part of that group that did something about it. So thank you, Ranger Doug, for allowing me to make a few comments on that mission.
Rick, thank you so much. How about telling us a bit about a song that might have focused you during that period, something you remember today, and maybe your unit shared the same feelings about it with you? Over to you, Rick.
Oh, it'd have to be Roland the Headless Thompson Gunner. I mean, I just bought a Thompson last year, and it's so much fun to take to the range, and that song is in my head every time. But no, the Warren Zevon, Roland the Headless Thompson Gunner.
Roland was a warrior from the land of the midnight sun, with a Thompson gun for hire, fighting to be done. The deal was made in Denmark on a dark and stormy day, so he set out for Biafra to join the bloody fray. His comrades fought beside him, Van Owen and the rest, but of all the Thompson gunners, Roland was the best. So the CIA decided they wanted Roland dead. That son of a bitch Van Owen blew off Roland's head. Roland the Headless Thompson Gunner.
There you go. Thank you very much, Rick. Over to you, General.
Our second guest tonight is Topper Rush, retired military colonel in the United States Army. And Topper was on the operation in Grenada. It was a very unusual time because, if you recall, after Vietnam, it was kind of a stand-down period. There wasn't much money in the military. There were issues going on back home that people didn't want any more war, especially after Vietnam. And those that served, it was a funny feeling. And when Grenada came, it was really a surprise because we really weren't engaged in any real-world operations except for training and kind of holding the line here and there around the world. Not a lot of money to train. And when Grenada came, it came fast. And I would say we really weren't ready for it at the time, even Special Operations Command. And our guest tonight was there. I remember meeting him after an air assault, and he came in by parachute. And so, Topper, if you would, tell us a little bit about your background and your experience in Grenada with the Rangers.
Well, thank you, General Grange. It's a real honor to be here. Well, as you know, with our listeners, I grew up in Texas. I was the son of an oil field roughneck who was also a World War II veteran, and a farmer's daughter from a small family farm in Texas, of course. I started roughnecking in the summers at age 17 to pay for college. I'm a fighting Texas Aggie. I was commissioned in 75. I served for over 26 years in light, airborne, mech infantry, and special operations. I was raised by the Vietnam generation of soldiers. They're combat-hardened infantrymen who never looked back, who never asked for sympathy after being spat upon on their return from the Vietnam battlefields. They always pushed us hard for excellence. I've served under many tremendous officers. You, of course, General Leach, General Kroll, General Foley, General Lindsay, General Luck, General Getz, just to name a few. But there's two officers that shaped me as a soldier and leader. That was you and General Leach. As my company commander and later battalion commander, you taught me the basics. To always look down and never look up. And always, like your father, you lived the Ranger Creed. General Leach taught me battalion and brigade operations. He also lived the Ranger Creed. In Grenada, I served as the principal Army air planner for the Ranger Airborne Insertion. Initially, only the 1st Ranger Battalion was to conduct the mission. By the time the 2nd Ranger Battalion was brought in, the airdrop was pretty much already finalized. I was in the middle of planning with Air Force planners from 1st Sal, 317th, and the 4th 37th at the headquarters there at Fort Bragg, when our battalion commander, then Lieutenant Colonel, later Brigadier General Wes Taylor, stuck his head in the door and said, "We're going to drop at 500 feet. The air planners, from the Air Force, which are a little bit more laid back than the Ranger Battalion, and I were friends. I'd worked with them a great deal in training exercises. I knew them well. But they all looked at me like I was a dead man. Following the jump, while assisting Air Force CCT in clearing the airfield so that the 130s could land, you may not, I guess you do recall, I ran across you, but you may not remember that at the time your hands and arms were covered with blood because you were bandaging a really badly wounded operator. That's about all on Grenada right now.
Topper, how did the jump go? I remember seeing it actually from a different altitude, but how did the jump go?
The bottom line is the operation was a success. As is often the case in combat, however, things did not go as planned. We were supposed to drop at night, but we dropped in daylight. I was told because of a mix-up between Zulu and regular time. As we made our approach into the drop zone, we began receiving heavy air defense fires and immediately lost formation integrity. Only Colonel Taylor and his RTOs dropped on the first pass. And he and his RTOs were alone on the ground for quite a while. About that time, the AC-130 showed up and pulled our asses out of the fire. They took out the air defense guns that had been placing effective fire on the AC-130 formation. When we started the second pass, and I made my jump and I hit the ground, everything was smoking. All the air defense systems had been neutralized. Now, even though the drop at this point was piecemeal, individual aircraft as opposed to the whole formation, and we lost company integrity, the individual rangers, team leaders, and squad leaders accomplished the mission. They and their aggressiveness carried the day. I will always appreciate what the AC-130 crews did. And to this day, anytime I meet an AC-130 crewman in a bar, I pay for the drinks.
Well, that's I guess typical of combat, Topper, and the air assault with the Blackhawks was really no different on confusion, communication problems, trucks out of order. But again, all the troopers rallied at the objective and completed the mission. I remember seeing you on the drop zone. A lot of that truck got dropped between helicopter blades turning on the ground on the DZ. Amazingly, no one was hurt. Amazingly in that regard. But mission was accomplished. Over to you, Ranger Doug.
Thanks, General. Topper, how about giving us a song that you remember from that period that was inspirational for you on your unit? Tell us a little bit about what it did for you. Over to you.
Well, it's a little bit different than something by Warren Zevon or some of the other people who were probably popular at the time. But I was raised as a Christian. Often I have strayed from that path. But as other Christian soldiers can attest, when it comes to a combat jump, you're praying real hard. But God gives you the strength to step out of that door and to do your mission. I can still recall, like it was yesterday, the all-encompassing fear. And I also recall deep sadness when later I stood beside a C-141 in the darkness as we loaded body bags onto the 141s. And the families of those soldiers had no idea of their fate. My song is "It Is Well With My Soul." It's a hymn written by Horatio Spafford in 1873 following several terrible family tragedies. I've sung it to myself many times when I was facing difficult circumstances like a close halo jump or surviving near-death experiences. Thank you, General Grange. It was an honor to be a part of this podcast.
When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul.
Thank you, Topper. This is Ranger Doug. I know that song well, and I share in all of your sentiments. Over to you, General.
Topper, great review and comments, and you hit home on the importance of songs to GIs. From the heart, from the soul, all about your family and your buddies. Thank you much.
Rangers either way, sir.
All the way.
Well, that's great. Let's take some time and enjoy a commercial.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. You do not want to miss what's coming next. Dallas Corporation and Dallas Logistics, a proud supporter of the Veterans Broadcast Network for over 19 years. High-quality printing services and warehouse distribution has been our hallmark since 1985, serving Fortune 100 companies for over 35 years. Check us out at www.dallascorp.com. If you are one of the 20 million veterans who served in the United States military, then this message is for you. During your time in the service, you might have experienced conditions and mishaps that have, or will have, an impact on your health and quality of life. Sometimes it takes years for these conditions to manifest themselves. Most veterans ignore the early warning signs and therefore miss opportunities that could have improved their health or extended their life. It is important that you identify underlying conditions early while you have a chance to make a difference. The VDAC software was created to help you identify presumptive service-connected conditions as well as assist you with filling out any of your VA disability forms. Not every veteran wants to file a claim. However, knowing what health issues to be aware of is an added benefit of living a long, healthy life. For those who want to file for their VA disability, the VDAC application greatly simplifies and expedites this process and therefore produces a perfectly filled out VA disability form with supporting material.
For more information, go to nifv.org. Again, that's nifv.org.
The goal of VDAC, the Veterans Disability Application Caddy, is to empower you, the veteran, with a quick and easy tool that aids you with filling out your VA disability forms.
My father was the best truck driver I've ever known in my life, like a family tradition.
I'm a truck driver myself. I drove around the States with my cat.
To be the truck driver, you not just only see where you go, you see the world in the larger perspective.
This is a really good time to be in the trucking industry. The dispatchers get good loads for them. The equipment is very new, and then it's very reliable.
At GTS Transportation, we make dreams come true by employing truck drivers, dispatchers, mechanics, and many other occupations. Consider joining our rapidly expanding team where we put quality, human dignity, and respect back into the workforce. Contact us by visiting our website at gtscarrier.com or call us at 847-754-4667. That number again, 847-754-4667. You're listening to Veterans Radio Hour on VBN.
Just wait, the whitey may roam. Always a hero comes home.
Tonight it's a real honor to have the son of a great friend of mine, Charlie Getz, who hired me into the job I entered after the Army. He also happens to be the brother-in-law of General Grange and the brother of Holly Grange, who's also a wonderful friend of mine. So we're welcoming you to the program tonight, Charlie, to tell us about your experiences on Just Cause, the operation in Panama in December of 1989. Please take a moment to introduce yourself.
Okay, well, I'm Charlie Getz. I actually enlisted into the Army in 1988, where I served as an infantryman with 1st Battalion, Alpha Company 1st Battalion 175. And during that time frame, I was able to participate in Operation Just Cause as a assistant machine gunner on an M60 machine gun team. And I have since served in the Army for 32 years, retiring a couple of years ago as an officer, Special Forces officer out of U.S. SOCOM.
Great. So tell us a bit about the mission itself.
Okay, so it was a pretty interesting experience, especially from my perspective, because 175, we were actually getting ready to go on block leave on 20 December 1989. And, of course, that's, we jumped into Panama on early morning of 21 December. And what happened is we were getting ready to leave for block leave. We were all sitting in the barracks watching the Simpsons Christmas special when we got the Bravo notification, which, because of the timing, we knew was for real. We knew we were definitely going to war. So we very excited, as you know, the culture of the Ranger Regiment. That's all you want is to go to war, do what we're trained to do, and our mission was to jump. Do a combat parachute assault on Omar Torrijos International Airport in the Republic of Panama in order to seize the airfield and eliminate any resistance on the airfield to allow the 82nd Airborne Division to jump in, assemble, and move to their HLZs so they could fly off to the assault objectives that they had been assigned. So it was quite an experience. We had a very short mission prep time, conducted our manifest call in freezing rain, loaded our rucksacks, rigged our rucksacks, and loaded the aircraft. Now, we were very lucky with 1st Battalion because we had 6 C-141 aircraft for the battalion, where 3rd Battalion and 2nd Battalion were crammed into C-130. So comparatively speaking, we were pretty comfortable. When we did conduct the combat assault, it was just after midnight on the 21st, and we jumped very low and very fast to assemble. We assembled on our assault objectives and got minimum force requirements and moved out to our various platoon assault objectives in order to eliminate any threat on the military side of the international airfield. Quite a few Rangers got injured on that jump. I was actually one of them. I am proud to say that every single Ranger from 175 that was injured on the jump did indeed make it to their assault objectives and accomplish the mission that first night that we were given. So that is a statistic that we are all very proud of. Following that first night, we watched the 82nd jump in, and we moved off to an HLZ where we loaded aircraft and flew off to Patia Airfield, where the SEALs had earlier gotten in a considerable firefight, and conducted operations to eliminate any remaining Panamanian defense forces and what they call the dignity battalions in the vicinity of Patia Airfield, and continued that mission until mission complete.
Thank you, Charlie. That was great. Would you just take a minute and just give us a short remembrance of your father? General Grange had asked me to ask you that.
So, my father, obviously, my personal hero, he was a West Point graduate. He served in Special Forces as well, 10th Special Forces Group, which was the group I served in Germany, and served 2 tours in Vietnam, where he had the distinction of becoming one of the most decorated soldiers, service members of for valor in the history of the U.S. military. He's very highly decorated with a Distinguished Service Cross, 6 Silver Stars, 6 Bronze Stars for valor, and several other valor awards. So what was very interesting about my father is he was really what everyone I have talked to that served with him would consider the soldier, very similar to both Brigadier General retired Grange and Lieutenant General retired Grange. I think they were all cut from the same cloth. And my father was obviously an incredible influence on both my sister Holly and I. I think that's one of the reasons we both went into military service. And as well as I think was a great example for everyone that he served with. And he especially had a very, very soft spot for non-commissioned officers. I mean, he really understood who was at the pointy end of the spear all the time, and really stressed to me the importance of the non-commissioned officer. And it was very interesting. My father actually commissioned me in 1994 when I commissioned out of ROTC, and he gave me 3 pieces of advice that I've followed religiously through my entire military career. The first was never take credit for anything that your soldiers do. Make sure that they get the credit for that. The second was never take credit for anything you think you've done because you haven't done it. That has been off the back of somebody else, so make sure the credit goes to where it belongs. And the third was a 1-ship LZ in the high ground is better than a 10-ship LZ in the low ground. And I can promise you I've applied all of those pieces of advice throughout the 32 years that I've served in the Army.
I really agree with your assessment of your father. I knew him well, and I agree. He's cut from the same cloth, and I'm sure you are as well. I enjoyed working for him. He made the rest of my life, and I can't thank him and you and General Grange enough. So, General, over to you for your part tonight.
Thank you, Ranger Doug. And Charlie, great having you on the show. Just to add to your comments on your dad, tough guy, hard ass, well-decorated, courage beyond belief, volunteered for everything in the tough areas. I was a little timid asking for your sister's hand in marriage from your dad, but got through it. Anyway, the only other thing that you're a great soldier just like your father, and the only thing that bothers me is I didn't get to go with you on the Panama mission because I was stuck in the National War College at the time. I'll never forgive you for that. Anyway, what song, Charlie, during this period of Panama do you identify with for yourself, for your soldiers, before, after the mission, during the mission? What comes to mind? What music?
That's a great question. And culture of the Ranger Regiment is hard charging, as you know. Everyone comes in with their own particular musical taste, but the culture of the regiment, I think, kind of drives us to a very heavy metal style of music. And I've given this quite a bit of thought when Holly reached out to me to do this podcast. And ultimately, what makes me think of my time in the regiment and during this time of operation is not one of those songs. It's not Metallica, it's not AC/DC, but it is actually a song I think captured it the best, especially as I look back, and that's the Dire Straits song, Brothers in Arms. And every time I hear that song, I think back to 3rd Platoon Alpha Company 175, and I still communicate with those guys. And this song, I think, captured the mood of that platoon throughout my tenure there from 1988 to 1992, especially after you almost killed us on that jump into Irish Gold. But I really think that's a song that captures everything.
Through these fields of destruction, baptisms of fire, I've witnessed your suffering as the battle raged high, and though it hurt me so bad in the fear and alarm, you did not desert me, my brothers in arms.
Really appreciate it, Charlie. Thanks for being on with us. It means a lot.
Thank you, Dave, and I appreciate you having me on, and same with you, Ranger Doug.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've got here tonight a very good friend of mine, Bryon Conover. We served together for many years, and we're still good friends. Bryon, how about telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, as you know, of course, I'm Bryon Conover, former Airborne Ranger Special Forces, and we were involved, the country was involved in conflict in El Salvador throughout the 80s. I had an opportunity to go down there. I just contacted by organization, by Delta, which asked me to come try out. But then I was also at the same time offered an opportunity to go to the only shoot more at that time in El Salvador, and I did. And I was responsible for 1/6 of the country as a young major there at Central Zone and stationed in San Vicente in a quartel there. And I was there from April 89 to May 90. And during the last final offensive in November 89, where the guerrilla forces, with the support of Soviet Union via Cuba and Nicaragua, threw everything they had at us, and we held them off.
Thanks, Bryon.
Okay.
How about telling us a little bit about your operation there and how long you stayed, what you did, and so forth?
Sure. I worked out, as I said, El Cuartel, which is a Spanish word for fort in San Vicente. And I had 3 SF E8s working for me, one sometimes in that area, the other in Central Tepeque to the north, which was not initially, we had to open it up. It's a pretty combative area, and one to the south in Zacatecoluca. And additionally, I worked with other agencies to include the CIA, who had representatives there, and on a regular basis. And as I've mentioned, in November of 89, there was what was known as the last offensive at that time. And the guerrilla forces went into the main city of San Salvador. In my area, they actually took over in Zacatecoluca. They took over the hospital. We had to retake it again. In my area, specifically San Vicente, they came into the graveyard, and we were fighting them there just on the edge of the town. And initially it looked kind of rough, but we beat them back in all places, in all cases, and it really broke their back. And that, combined with what would be happening with the fall of the Soviet Union, and less, of course, support, enabled us and the government to negotiate with the guerrillas and come to terms, come to peace.
And when did you arrive in country?
My tour there was just over a year, from April 89 to April 90, or May 90. And I did have a site survey that I went on just, I guess, a couple months prior to that. We've been earlier in February, January 89, where I had an opportunity to look around and do what a site survey entails.
That's great. Well, and I was lucky enough to link back up with you just after that. So we had a great time, and I can't thank you enough. How about a song that you remember that was important to you at the time? Might be an old song, might be a song you heard at the time, but was there a piece of music that was inspirational or supportive to you and or your people?
Well, there are several songs, but this one is kind of ironic in a way, because I was familiar with it before, but I was kind of sensitized to it and heard heard it again repeatedly on my site survey, where the major I was replacing, of course, he was in a festive mood getting out of there and had more than a few drinks. And that night, I can remember as I laid down there, we had a little room, and I was on the top bunk, and that we'd just been hit several days before at the hotel there. And he had just gotten to the embassy a small TV and a little video player. Remember, this is 1989. And he played that night 2 movies over and over. Now, one was the John Wayne Green Beret. And of course, you would expect to hear the Ballad of Green Bay Beret, but that's not the song I'm referring to. He also played repeatedly several scenes from a classic movie. It's just turned about 80 years old. And Casablanca with Humphrey Bogart and Claude Rains and Paul Henreid and I forget the woman, Ingrid Bergman. And it was as time goes by, the song. I don't think he wrote it, but he sang it, played the piano on it. Satchmo, Louis Armstrong, and it's a beautiful song, and it's a romantic song. And it's interesting, that I would think of it with that in mind, because for all the embattled and really terrifically horrible nature of it. I mean, a war is a bad thing, but a civil war is so much worse in so many ways that I think of this romantic song now as kind of telling, I guess. And so I guess that's the song I would suggest.
You must remember this. A kiss is just a kiss. A sigh is just a sigh. The fundamental things apply as time goes by. And when 2 lovers woo, they still say I love you. On that you can rely. No matter what the future brings as time goes.
All right. Well, Byron, thank you very much. And that was Byron Conover from Bogota, Colombia, over a non-standard recording method. We're lucky to have people like that.
Let's take another break for a commercial. Thank you. We'll be back in a moment.
The trucking industry was born by the military during World War I and therefore became the father of the trucking industry. Being a truck driver achieved national attention in the 1960s, when songs and movies included truck driving as a part of the storyline. If you're looking for an easy job that pays well, then GTS Transportation is looking for you. GTS Transportation is a leading transportation company with a great history. We are an international company with opportunities all around the world. Apply now by going to our website, gtscarrier.com, or call us at 847-754-4667. That number again, 847-754-4667. Apply now and become a part of truck driving history. If you are one of the 20 million veterans who served in the United States military, then this message is for you. During your time in the service, you might have experienced conditions and mishaps that have, or will have, an impact on your health and quality of life. Sometimes it takes years for these conditions to manifest themselves. Most veterans ignore the early warning signs and therefore miss opportunities that could have improved their health or extended their life. It is important that you identify underlying conditions early while you have a chance to make a difference. The VDAC software was created to help you identify presumptive service-connected conditions as well as assist you with filling out any of your VA disability forms. Not every veteran wants to file a claim. However, knowing what health issues to be aware of is an added benefit of living a long, healthy life. For those who want to file for their VA disability, the VDAC application greatly simplifies and expedites this process and therefore produces a perfectly filled out VA disability form with supporting material.
For more information, go to nifv.org. Again, that's nifv.org.
The goal of VDAC, the Veterans Disability Application Caddy, is to empower you, the veteran, with a quick and easy tool that aids you with filling out your VA disability forms.
Welcome back to Veterans Radio Hour 2.0. This is Ranger Doug. This is program number 14 of our Veterans Radio Hour 2.0. This is the second program in our series, Music of War. This one is entitled Songs of Small Wars. Let's listen. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've got the great honor tonight of having two Rangers who fought in that battle on October 3rd, 1993 in Mogadishu, Somalia. It's become known as Black Hawk Down. We have tonight with us Command Sergeant Major Rick Lamb, who's been with us before, and Keni Thomas, who was a staff sergeant when he left the Army and is now, to us anyway, a famous entertainer, and you'll hear more about that in a moment. Rick, how about giving us a short background of yourself?
Yeah, my name is Rick Lamb. I'm a retired Command Sergeant Major. I spent 26 years in Army SOF. I served in 2 of the 3 Ranger battalions, 4 of the 5 Special Forces group, and I can't believe that I got paid to do it. I would do it all over again. It was a great ride.
How about a somewhat longer background of yourself, because you're not a regular? Keni?
My military time, I just did 2 enlistments, and they were both at the Ranger Regiment. It's what my dad did, what I knew to go do, and I was an E5, kind of a new sergeant when Mogadishu went down, and that was, Rick and I have been talking about that recently, and it's amazing how it wasn't even a full day. It was an 18-hour battle, and how here we are 30 years later, and it still defines us and who we are and how we approach life, and just like all the other soldiers that you've had on, how we continue to honor those people that we lost and how we live the Ranger Creed, and just it's for such a short amount of time of my life how immensely that time in regiment and the Rangers affected me. So it's a short description of my military career. I got to do a lot of cool things, jumped out of some planes from some really high altitudes, did some cool diving stuff when I went to the reconnaissance teams, and some of my best friends and my best memories. But it's amazing to me how much that Ranger creed has affected my life 30 years later.
So take some time then to describe the action in the battle itself. And at some point, I know you link up with Rick and he can take it from there. Over to you, Keni.
The 3rd of October in Mogadishu, people don't know, we had been in country for a couple months already. We'd run over 40-something raids into the city. We were going after this guy, Adid. Adid was a bad guy. He was a warlord. He had been attacking the United Nations food shipments. And then when American troops started guarding the food shipments, he started attacking American troops. And then we were sent in as this posse, really, to go get this guy. It was basically a special operations package, hadn't been put together before. It was Delta Force operators, the 160th Special Operations Air Regiment, and Rangers. And there were some Navy guys with tattoos of small sea mammals on their arms. They were there, and they don't get talked about too much. But we were all in country going after Adid, and he went into hiding, so it got a little bit difficult. So if we couldn't get him, we had a most wanted list, basically, Doug, is what I'm getting at. And on the 3rd of October, it was a Sunday, day off from training. We weren't supposed to even be working. A lot of guys were outside playing volleyball, or I was actually writing a letter home to my mom, and, she still has the front end of the letter. Dear Mom, you would love it here in sunny Mogadishu. Don't tell your mom what's going on over there, because it was throwing mortar rounds at you every other day. It was a bad place to be. And the guy walked out of the airplane hangar and said, "Get it on." And that was, so you drop what you're doing. And it turns out this mission was a daylight raid into the center of Mogadishu, into this area called the Bakara Market. The reason it was worth the risk of a daylight raid, obviously, we don't prefer to go in the daytime, but there were 2 guys on our most wanted list that were supposed to be in that building. So the original mission, it was an air assault. So we go in, the Delta operators are going to raid the building, just kind of like a SWAT team, and then the Rangers are going to pull security around the outside of the building. We're going to round up the bad guys. There's a ground convoy that's supposed to show up. All the bad guys get put on the trucks. That's exactly how the mission goes down. Completely successful. 3:30 in the afternoon, I remember looking at my watch. We were just about wrapped up. They brought 24 people out of the building. Trucks drive up. They throw them on the trucks. Trucks drive away. And we're done. And then we get the confirmation that the two dudes, the HVTs were in there. We got them. Hua, get you guys consolidated. We're getting out of here. I remember watching the last vehicle turn the corner towards the airfield, and then everybody that had a radio on, they all came alive because everybody was on the same freak. And you hear this, there's a Black Hawk going down, it's Black Hawk. And, we all knew who it was. It was Super 6-1 was the call sign. It was Cliff Walcott and Bull Briley were the two pilots. And we looked up and you could see him, and he's kind of in this weird spin. It didn't look normal, and he crashes about 5 blocks away to the northeast, and that's when everything changed. And the whole mission changed. So the vehicles that are driven away with the prisoners are now going to reroute, and they're supposed to link up with us at the crash. They're supposed to beat us there because they're only a couple blocks away. And then the 80 of us on the target building are going to move on foot. So it's like 5 blocks. We're going to move away. And we start moving on foot. When we turn the corner towards that crash, if you can picture Doug and General Grange, you can picture about 2 blocks. Just up on the right, just north of me, I could see the crash sticking out of an alleyway, and there's about 100 guys now fighting in this 2-block radius. And in retrospect, they told us we were outnumbered 10-1. I never saw 10 guys at one time. I did see twosies and threesies everywhere. And if we had a whole nother podcast and we had a whole nother hour, I think Rick and I could sit here and tell you stories of just absolute heroics. And I mean in the true definition of the word, because we throw, we throw the word hero around quite a bit these days. But I can tell you things that I saw that were incredible. Just the lengths that people would go to for each other. And in no small part, I'm gonna toss it over to Rick right now. Like, just his story alone, the hell that those guys went through, repeatedly getting ambushed. That he was on a reaction force and it was a hodgepodge trying to come get us, because at this point we had so many wounded guys at the crash site. Out of the 80 or 100 of us, there's like 40 or 50 are wounded. We just couldn't move them, and we needed help. And these guys like Rick Lamb just kept coming, and they were blown up and shot up and beat up, but they never gave up. And they finally got to us at about 4 a.m. and helped us load all the wounded guys up. And they drove away. And the plan was, and I'd love to hear Rick's thought on this. The plan was that the rest of us that were able to move, there were about 30 of us left. They said, okay, you're going to use these vehicles and we're going to run behind them like in World War II, like we're running behind a tank, that's going to be our cover. And when the sunlight came up, the dudes in the vehicles, man, then when the rounds started going again, they just hit the pedal. They took off like, hey, I'm a pretty fast guy, Doug, but I'm not that fast. And so now there's 30 of us just running out of the city. And it went to that part of the Ranger Creed where readily will I display the intestinal fortitude required. Because it didn't matter if I yelled more loudly or moved more quickly, or nobody was going to come back, because there just wasn't anybody left. And the 30 of us, by the grace of God, made it out. So I'd love to hear Rick's story, because it's a whole nother story of how he had to come in and get us, and then what happened once he got all the wounded guys and headed out. Sergeant Major, your turn.
Outstanding. Yeah. Hey, thanks, Keni. My jaw's dropping here just remembering this stuff. I was an 18 series guy. So I'd served as an 11 Bravo in 1st Ranger Battalion, and then I did a tour in Korea. And my sergeant major came to me one day and he says, "You 4 fellas, I see how you're working with the Koreans, and your next stop is Special Forces." And so we were pretty much told that the recruiter was coming up and we were going to SF. And so I went through the Q course, was not uncommon back in that day for the next rung on the ladder for the Rangers to go to the Q course, and then you go back. So, but somewhere in that whole time frame, I spent about 6 years in 7th Group down in Panama, Special Forces branches. So I'm unable to go back to the Rangers. And I run into my old company commander, Dave Grange, and he says, "Not so fast. General Downing wants he doesn't like the split between the Rangers and SF. And he wants to take Rangers who started out in battalion and went to group. He wants to bring them back to battalion in a program called Crosswalk. So when I reported into 3rd Ranger Battalion, I was an 18 Zulu. I was a Special Forces sergeant. And since I had gone to Operations and Intelligence Sergeant School, I got pegged to be the battalion ops sergeant. As I walked in, I was supposed to go take a platoon, but Sergeant Major Salinas says, nope, we just lost our ops sergeant. You're going to do that job for a year, and then we'll send you to a platoon. So when I walked in, I was the ops guy working up in battalion for then Major Ferreter. I had a great team, and so we get called out, go to Mogadishu, and so I've got, I think, the graveyard shift in the TOC, which is 0200 to 1000. And it's basically talk watch, and then of course when the call outs would happen, every able-bodied ops guy would go into the talk. And if you remember back in that day, we had the big wall out, right? It had all the satellite imagery on it, and the satellite imagery was gridded. So the drive, we usually infill by air, reinforced by ground, and exfil either by air or by ground. So the aviators would come in, the drivers would come in, the assault teams would come in, and everybody's getting this mission settled. Then we'd print off. Remember, it was just pieces of paper basically on a dry erase board that had copy and print capability, and the rotor blades are turning, and you guys would launch. So that's basically, so you guys are out there, you're getting after it, and you're absolutely right. About 1500, we're all high-fiving, thinking, damn, that was easy. Got the package. They're heading back, and then we saw the helicopter go down, because I think Mogadishu was one of the first times that we actually had cameras. We had video feeds going into the TOC, and so we watch it go down. And we're looking at it, and then I think it was Major Nixon comes in and he says, "Rick, get every able-bodied Ranger off the wall." Whoever wasn't out on mission was guarding the perimeter. They were up in fighting positions in those air, sea, land containers on the wall. And so we had to get everybody off the wall. We transloaded into anything that would run, 5 tons, deuce and a halves, Humvees, and we went out. And so I think the first convoy to go out, hit the K4 traffic circle, and we're heading over there, and we actually run into the convoy that I think was taking Blackburn off the objective. Remember, he had fallen and broken his back. And their vehicles are all shot up, and I mean, some of them are the vehicle is just getting to where it came to a stop as we roll up. We were able to transload those guys, and then we get back into the perimeter. But by that time, the city was alive. I mean, it was just crawling with bad guys. And so as we go rolling in, I mean, all the sideboards in our vehicles were shot out. I think our radiator had a hole in it, and so we had to go find another truck. And of course, the vehicles that had come in from that small convoy, again full of blood, like in the movie. Remember, they said they washed the vehicles out, get the blood out of the vehicles. And I felt sorry for that team that had just come in, because you could just see the blood drain out of their face when you said, "Hey, we gotta refit, rearm, and we gotta go back out there." And but everybody did. We had kids that were I can't remember who it was, cutting a cast off of his forearm so that he could get back into get into the truck. Yes, so he could get gun into the truck. And we took that initial air sea land container that was in front of the hangar, and it was full of sandbags. So we started sandbagging the trucks, and we took a head count, and we went back out the front gate, and we were supposed to link up with the 10th Mountain, who were coming down from the university, the QRF, and man, we both got trounced. I mean, the fire was so thick that we had to go back inside the wire of the airport. They had to go back up to the university and take that end road, remember, that they had cut around the western edge of the airfield. Yep. So they had to come down through there. We decided, okay, we're going to sneak out of the port, and for that third convoy. And the third convoy was when we got the Pakistani tanks. We got the Malaysian APCs, and I thought, okay, good, we're going to get some cover this time, because I remember Easterbrooks was my driver, and I crawled in the back of the 5-ton. when we had gone through an ambush, and I was crawling out of the driver's seat, getting back into the back of the vehicle to see if anybody was wounded. And the sideboards were all shot up, and all the guys got these shit-eating grins because nobody got hit, right? And I get back into the front seat, and I look over at Easterbrooks, and he is stone cold white. He's got his hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, and right at the 12 o'clock position on the steering wheel is snapped. You know, the front window had been stitched, and the rounds had gone through and snapped the front of the steering wheel at 12 o'clock. Missed him completely, and he's like, I don't know what just happened. I don't know how I survived this. And wow, we get to the port, and that was on the second convoy, right? The one where we had to hightail it back in. And on the third convoy, when we finally got the armored vehicles, I ended up with, I think I had the cooks, I had the clerks, I had the ammo NCO, and we were the ground dismounts to provide security for the M48 Pakistani tanks. And I tell you, Keni, that's the scariest I have ever been. Not because of all the fire and everything, but the fact that I thought as we're pushing those kids out and getting a head count, and then we got to collect them all up, get them back in the vehicles, when the convoy gets ready to move again. And I thought, God damn it, I'm going to leave one of these kids in the street. He's going to get wounded. I'm going to miss him. He's going to step out in the alleyway to take a piss, and I'm going to miss him. And but that was until we linked up. We ended up losing our vehicle somewhere around 2 a.m. I think I had been wounded, Easterbrooks wounded, and we had probably one more kid in the back. And it was just it was crazy.
Isn't it incredible that the basics that they taught every one of us, just as young NCOs, that became like paramount in that type of situation? It wasn't the cool guy gear or the equipment or the tactics. It was the training. It was accountability. Shoot, move, communicate, and just look after one another. And that's what I just saw at its basic core going down. Like people, you would think out here in the real world that you're getting fired at, you're getting shot at, you're getting blown up as people, and most people would go, "Oh my gosh, I was so scared. I wanted to run and hide." And but what your headspace was is, "Oh, I'm responsible for these guys. I can't leave anybody." That's what you're thinking, and it's so core and basic to the way that you and I think, or that we think as soldiers and as rangers and as operators. But it's not that way out here, and it's a tough and maddening conversations at times that I have with people to try and understand. It's bigger than just you.
And Keni, we've had this discussion just yesterday when we reconnected. That's why guys are killing themselves. I mean, when they lose that sense of tribe, that sense of purpose, and and they lose that faith in the system. Faith in God, the faith, family, fitness, friends, and finances. Those 5 F's. When they lose those, it's an easy decision to figure that the world's better off without you. But I'm with you, and that's why the guys are so tight now. I mean, out of the blue, my first company commander calls me, and we're back. We almost complete sentences again. Amazing.
So Rick, can I ask you a question? So when you guys pushed through, we heard you coming all night. It was like, hey, the convoy's coming, and then it was, let's just order a pizza because these guys aren't coming anytime soon. And then it was, hey, the convoy's coming, and we could hear you throughout the night trying to get to us at the crash site. It was 4 a.m. when you guys finally pushed through. Now, did you get to the crash site, and did your guys help load up? Because there's some 10th Mountain kids in there, and there's a couple of Malaysian, the APCs, and we loaded all the wounded guys and threw all the bodies on top of the vehicles, and so, there was no more room in the ARC. And I'm wondering, I've never talked to anybody that was in that vehicle convoy that got to us.
When we got there, it was exactly what you described. I mean, because some of the vehicles, if they stopped, they weren't going again, and that was ours. So we got to the point where our oil pan was gone. We had 4 run flats. There was an RPG sticking out of the fin sticking out of the rear fender well, and because one had glanced off the hood, that was the one that took me out. And so finally we just thermited the engine. And so now we're on foot, and so we're trying to go around and get our wounded into the vehicles. And that was the problem. There were so many dead and wounded in those vehicles that you'd go to one and you'd bang on the hull and they'd open up and there's no room. I mean, guys are just stacked like cordwood. And I can't remember who the operator was that was stuck in the cupola. And he was there all night. I mean, he was just ashen gray, dead, obviously, but they hadn't been able to pull him down. And he was just sprawled like, you know, the Dances with Wolves on the horse. In that, and I can't remember who that was, but that just sticks in my mind.
That's Earl Fillmore.
That's Earl Fillmore. Okay. So, but it was just, so we ended up, I ended up doing the Mogadishu half mile because there wasn't any room, and then some 10th Mountain guys pulled up and said, "Get in the back," and we ended up getting in the back of a Hummer. But I remember you guys run on the side because there was no room. You know, and the problem was that they were tweaking their command and control and their reaction during all the missions that we had done previously. So they were blocking key avenues, key streets. They were burning tires. I mean, they had you know, their communications were improving. So they were able to, and that was why we couldn't get to you guys, because we kept getting turned around in these dead alleys, dead ends, and we'd have to back out. And the whole time you're just under fire from the rooftops, from the buildings. I remember one of this was when we were on foot, Easterbrooks and I, we're hiding in a building, and there's bad guys on the roof that are shooting down at the tank, and the tank goes around and puts a main gun round in the building, and we're trying to scramble because the building's falling down on us, and because they didn't know that we were there, and we didn't know that they were going to fire into the building, and there was that whole night was chaos. But do you remember coming out, and like you said, when the sun starts coming up, and we had gone from, you know, the Black Sea area into another neighborhood, getting closer to the soccer stadium, and they actually liked us. But I remember them coming to the side of the roads, and so everybody comes up on weapons again, and they're up on the rails, and they're getting ready to lay into this crowd, but they're cheering. Do you remember that? And they were actually cheering the convoy as we're pulling out of there and going into the Pakistani stadium. And then that whole place was just surreal.
Yeah, that's a good word to put. It was a good surreal. They crossed this imaginary line. Like all of a sudden you're safe. Safe.
Yes.
You made it.
Yeah. It was. Wasn't it like that? Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's a good life lesson, Rick, for anybody, for our kids, for the companies we work for, as far as that the enemy did. They got better at what they do, and we forget. The enemy gets a vote. I mean, we've had that saying in Iraq. You know, the enemy gets a vote. And so let's not get surprised and get our panties in a wad when the enemy reacts and they change the way that we wanted to do things. And you're like, what? They're not supposed to. But they always do.
It's happened more than once. You know, where a toothless dude in sandals will discount them, and they will hand you your lunch.
Yep.
You got it.
Don't underestimate them.
Hey, Thomas and Ranger Lamb.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I do a fascinating story. It was great. Thanks so much. But you both mentioned something, and I want to follow up on that. On Keni, you mentioned something about the Ranger Creed, never leave a fallen comrade. And what you did there and how that affected you when you took your Ranger beret off. Can you give us a quick
the most lasting. Yeah, sir. So what I'm hearing you say is that when you've lived it at its core level and at what it was meant to be, the Ranger Creed, how does it affect you, down the line? And I think the most lasting lesson I've gotten out of it, is that what you're asking me, sir?
Yeah, please. That's very important.
Okay.
Yes.
I think the most lasting lesson that I've gotten that the Ranger Creed has instilled in me is it's the value of the people on your left and your right, and the value that you are to them. We've all been told surround yourself with great people, but then we forget that we are the great people that others have surrounded themselves with. And that leadership responsibility, never shall I fail my comrades, is a choice. And it's a responsibility and it's a choice. And what I go out there and I talk to people about when people start complaining about the state of things, I'm like, hey, leadership is never easy. And when we need you is when it's hard. We don't need you when it's easy. We can all do it ourselves. Never shall I fail my comrades. And I think that's the most lasting one that I saw, because what I learned, sir, that everybody that's been under fire knows is the only reason you stay in the fight is for each other. That's it. It's not for the greater glory of the Ranger Regiment. It's not for, it wasn't even at that point for the mission anymore. It was just for each other. That's it.
Keni, what you just said, for each other, you just nailed it. I think there's nothing else to say. That's it. And
it's a mic drop.
Leadership. Yeah, it is. Leadership is the cause. All else effect. Right on. Rick, on your comments, you talked about, and Keni did, about shoot, move, and communicate, the basics. My feeling is from Vietnam, and actually learned most of it from bad things that happened, mistakes that were made. And I felt about that later on in my military service. And what if you cannot do that? If that does not happen, tell me your feelings that go through your mind when you see your fallen comrades in a coffin off a ramp of a C-130 or 17 or 141 with the American flag draped over it. How does that connect your thoughts?
No, it rips out your heart. I mean, because I remember we went and visited the guys in the morgue, and it just because there's a difference between a live body and a dead body. I mean, a dead body looks dead, and it's cold and it's hard, and you can thump it, and it's like thumping the table. And then just knowing that those guys are not around anymore, and then just seeing the pain that is going to be with that family. Those parents, those spouses, those kids, for the rest of their life, for generations. It rips your heart out, and you get angry. I don't think any man was ever the same after Mogadishu. And it used to be that you go to the range and you could say, okay, gentlemen, we're going to strip down to our pants and we can go t-shirts. We're going to just do some advanced marksmanship. That stuff ended. It was every range from then on out was in full kit, and full basic load, full kit, so that you knew where all your equipment was, place for everything in its place, and you could actually run your weapons and work your weapons, with body armor, with LCE, with a helmet. And we never went anywhere without our nods after that. You never went anywhere without a double basic load, without more water. We quit doing the easy stuff that we liked, which was, blow the door charge, go in, 4-man, 6-man, serial clear the building and recock the target. Let's go out and do it again. I mean, you fought onto every objective. And, we went right back to what you had us doing in 1979, which was, worst case. There was always a casualty. A medic always had to get a stick into that casualty, and you had to cross-load the equipment. So we lose that about every 5 years. When death takes a holiday, and you lose that ability. But no, I mean we would worst case for the rest of our careers, every man. You take leaders out of the fight and you let young kids struggle to step up and do it again. And again, that we've talked about this before. That's my biggest fear now, is that if we're in this peacetime mode, that Big Green can't help itself. It's going to make the kids do stupid shit, but they still have to shoot, move, and communicate. I mean, the leaders have to do that, and then everything else falls in after that.
Rick, that's a great wrap. The leaders are responsible for the basics: shoot, move, and communicate. And we talked about on another show the medical piece, the first aid, the buddy aid, doing what you can with what you have for trauma, taking care of the fallen, taking care of your ranger buddy, taking care of your team. And it just goes down to that. They have most mistakes, most memories are from failure to do the basics. And that's the leader's responsibility. In closing on this segment, which was a wonderful segment, before we go back to Ranger Doug, Keni, I want your permission to play one of your songs that inspired you, why you wrote it, why you put it together, why you sing it, tied to the Rangers. Thank you very much for everything both of you do and have done.
Blood on their knuckles, mud on their face. They fall back to the huddle for one last play. The quarterback says, you gotta buy me sometime. I can get us there, boys, if we hold the line. Hold the line, hold the line. Shoulder to shoulder and side by side. You give it your best, and I'll give it mine. We can win this together if we hold the line.
Back to you, Ranger Doug.
Thanks, General. Rick, I'd like to just ask you for a song that you remember from that time that provided inspiration to you or has come to mean something to you after the fact. What would that song be, Rick?
Babe, I Got You, Babe, from Sonny and Cher. And the reason I say that is because we had 400 pipe hitters staging out of that airplane hangar, and the Hardy Boys had set up a movie theater in one corner with a VCR and a small, tube-type TV on one of those stands. And we were watching, I think, Groundhog Day with Bill Murray when the mission for the Olympic Hotel broke. And I had that song in my head the entire night. And, one of those things where it was almost, getting wounded was almost a relief but that's the song I had in my head the entire time. I wish I had a better song, but for you, for motivation, but, that when that song plays, I go right back to Mogadishu.
They say we're young and we don't know, won't find out till we grow. Well, I don't know if all that's true, 'cause you got me, baby, I got you. Babe, I got you, babe. I got you, babe. They say our love won't pay the rent, for it's earned, our money's all been spent. I guess that's so we don't have a plot, but at least I'm sure of all the things we got. Babe, I got you, babe.
Well, Keni, how about you? You got a similar song, or did you share the same song with Rick?
I'd probably tune that one out. What's funny to me is I've been the guy who goes overseas and plays the songs for them, and what I've seen is I can't explain it, but music. I love that you guys are doing this thread, this like music and how it affects the combat soldier, because I don't know how it does it, but it just reaches people differently. And the story that I would tell you about the song that meant the most to me, that will always remind me of Mogadishu, was the day after the battle, and Rick will remember this, everybody was kind of dragging ass around the hangar, and we were all moping around, and we had, starting to feel sorry for ourselves, and everybody was super sore, and Colonel Boykin gets up on a little platform and he says, "Hey, everybody gather around." And it was really weird because, Doug, you figure there were 400 Muldoons packed in an airplane hangar, and now 100 of them are gone. And so you see a lot of empty bunks, and he stands up on this, I gave like a water cooler, or he goes, "All right, everybody stand around here." And he starts reading the speech We few, we happy few, we band of brothers. As he reads it, he gets more and more intense. And he doesn't just stop when he finishes the line. And he's got it memorized. And he doesn't stop, and he goes straight into God Bless America. And everybody started singing. And it was the worst rendition of the song I've ever heard, because everybody was out of tune, out of key, and people were crying. Yeah. But I've sung that song at baseball games, at football games, and it always brings me back to that hangar and how music was. That was our church. That was our hymn right there. Our God Bless America. And that's the song for me.
We few, we happy few, we band of brothers. For he today that sheds his blood with me shall be my brother. Be he ne'er so vile, this day shall gentle his condition. And gentlemen in England now abed shall think themselves accursed they were not here.
Thanks, Keni. Those are two great memories, and we really appreciate what you both had to say. General, over to you.
Thank you again, Ranger Doug and Ranger Keni and Ranger Rick. Great stories about fallen comrades, the music of war, what it meant to you, what it meant to your teams, your unit, and appreciate you being on.
There were two songs mentioned as part of this program that were favorites of ours in special operations during the early 80s and 90s. Roland the Headless Thompson Gunner and Strength and Muscle and Jungle Work by Warren Zevon, or Zevon as some would call him. He was a great rocker, friend of Linda Ronstadt, played with the Eagles, heck of a talent. He could write songs about special operations and soldiering and spycraft, although he never was a soldier. We loved his music and we respected him greatly. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2003 of mesothelioma, the same disease that claimed Steve McQueen. We miss him. We salute you, Warren. Rest well.
On a midnight run with the M16 and the Ingram gun, we parachute in, we parachute out, death from above, we're screaming now. Strength and muscle and jungle work.
Well, that concludes our part 2 of the series tonight, and thank you for being on our podcast. Appreciate it, and the best to all you veterans out there and their families. I think that we had some tremendous guests tonight. We covered some of the other conflicts that our American GIs are a part of, and it just goes to show you how songs, how music affects the life of the American GI out here.
Thank you for listening to Veterans Radio Hour. Veterans Broadcast Network, bringing you shows like Veterans Radio Hour, Wounded But Not Broken, and Roll Call. Listen each week as General Grange and his guests address issues faced by veterans throughout their lives.
Dallas Corporation and Dallas Logistics, a proud supporter of the Veterans Broadcast Network for over 19 years. High-quality printing services and warehouse distribution has been our hallmark since 1985, serving Fortune 100 companies for over 35 years. Check us out at www.dallascorp.com.
The trucking industry was born by the military during World War I and therefore became the father of the trucking industry. Being a truck driver achieved national attention in the 1960s, when songs and movies included truck driving as a part of the storyline. If you're looking for an easy job that pays well, then GTS Transportation is looking for you. GTS Transportation is a leading transportation company with a great history. We are an international company with opportunities all around the world. Apply now by going to our website, gtscarrier.com, or call us at 847-754-4667. That number again, 847-754-4667. Apply now and become a part of truck driving history. If you are one of the 20 million veterans who served in the United States military, then this message is for you. During your time in the service, you might have experienced conditions and mishaps that have, or will have, an impact on your health and quality of life. Sometimes it takes years for these conditions to manifest themselves. Most veterans ignore the early warning signs and therefore miss opportunities that could have improved their health or extended their life. It is important that you identify underlying conditions early while you have a chance to make a difference. The VDAC software was created to help you identify presumptive service-connected conditions as well as assist you with filling out any of your VA disability forms. Not every veteran wants to file a claim. However, knowing what health issues to be aware of is an added benefit of living a long, healthy life. For those who want to file for their VA disability, the VDAC application greatly simplifies and expedites this process and therefore produces a perfectly filled out VA disability form with supporting material.
For more information, go to nifv.org. Again, that's nifv.org.
The goal of VDAC, the Veterans Disability Application Caddy, is to empower you, the veteran, with a quick and easy tool that aids you with filling out your VA disability forms.